Here we move to the second week of COP26. The first week was concentrated with climate debates, announcements. And there were really sound voices in favor of nuclear power as a mean of carbon decarbonization and carbon neutrality, and our goal to achieve net zero. So I would like to start our discussion, the discussion devoted to clear nuclear energy. This discussion organized and hosted by Rosatom Corporation, State Atomic Energy Corporation. And I would like our speakers to limit their speech by 5 minutes, 5-6 minutes. And would like to present our panel, the speakers in the panel. So I think it's very interesting, it's very nice speakers. And let me introduce Kirill Komarov, First Deputy Director General for Development and International Business of Rosatom. Sama Bilbao y Leon, Director General of World Nuclear Association. Clarine Debossison, Chief Sustainability Officer at Electricité de France, and Tom Sampson, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Chief Executive Officer of Rolls-Royce SMR Consortium. So, first of all, I would like to start with welcoming notes of Rafael Grossi, who is Director General of International Atomic Energy Agency. So, and please.
Greetings to you all participating in the Clean Atoms Day in the Russian Federation. It is a pleasure to address you today. As you can see, I'm recording this event, and you can see by the background here, at the COP26 Climate Change Conference in Scotland, in Glasgow. And what we are bringing here is a message that I'm sure comes across and is also at the heart of your deliberations there. The role of nuclear energy for a decarbonized economy, for economies that can grow powered by this clean, stable source of energy. And of course, the fact that this event is taking place in Russia is so important because Russia has 70 years or more of a legacy of excellence in this important scientific and technological activity. It was already in 1954 that the reactor at Obninsk started feeding the power grids in Russia. So it's no surprise that this has continued. And Russian scientists and technologists are making great strides in areas like small and modular reactors and advanced form and designs of reactors. So as Director General of the IAEA, I'm very pleased to join you today to wish you an excellent conference and to commit ourselves as a community working for the peaceful uses of nuclear energy to continue doing that in the way we are doing for a safer and cleaner planet.
Okay. Thank you to Mr. Grossi for welcoming notes. So we're coming back to COP26, to our room. So let me introduce myself. I think I didn't introduce myself. My name is Igor Karatetsky. I'm partner with KPMG and will be your moderator today and will moderate the discussion, our discussion. So I would like to start with the first question. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Komarov. So, I think we talk about Russia, a little bit about Russia. Mm-hmm. Russia recently committed to net zero. Vladimir Putin committed to net zero, so in 2060. And we also approved our strategy for economic development with low carbon emissions. So, and as I remember, one of the scenarios, the target scenario, includes the nuclear power increase in energy mix from 20% to 25%. So taking this into account, I suggest that the nuclear power, one of the significant pillar in Russian low carbon development. And also I know that Rosatom, not just a state corporation, it's not just a national player, not just a Russian company. You have also some projects in overseas. As I know, you built about nine power stations, yes?
9 countries.
9 countries, okay, nine
Much
countries.
more, much more
Okay,
units.
okay. 9 countries, and you build power stations in 9 countries overseas. So, and I think you have some insights on this. So, I mean, probably you feel some shifting in demand regarding the nuclear power, taking into account so the parameters of nuclear power. So I mean low carbon parameters of nuclear power. So can you provide us with some insights and your feelings on this?
Thank you very much, Igor, for your question. Good morning, everybody, and let me start to talk with our own country. You're right, today nuclear is the biggest source of clean energy in our country. It's more than 20% as to the end of previous year. This year we will see, but I do not believe that it will decrease. And it's very important that our government decided to increase the source of electricity up to 25% on average. Honestly, in European part of Russia, it's now even more. It's above 40% because the majority of our nuclear power plants are located in the European part of country. But the goal is, you're right, to increase the average quantity of nuclear power up to 25% of energy balance in our country. And it's not only due to documents and decisions you mentioned about our net zero goals, about strategy of our economical development. What is also very important, especially here in all this international discussion, that our government in September officially approved so-called Russian national green taxonomy, and our government officially included nuclear energy in this taxonomy. It was a very important step because we see a lot of discussion in different countries include or doesn't include. We see a big battle in Europe, but honestly speaking, from my personal point of view, we see more and more European countries who are strongly pro-nuclear, and this quantity of countries is increasing. Let me remind you that it was start of just a very famous letter of 7 countries, as I remember. Now afterwards it was 10. Now Netherlands already joined the same club, and we see now that the countries who are as a minimum neutral to nuclear energy, as a maximum optimistically pro-nuclear, it's a very growing quantity of countries, not only in Europe, but all over the world. If you see the majority of big economies in the world, China, India, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the majority of these countries decided to develop nuclear and develop very strongly, especially China and India, for example. And I think that it's due to 2 facts. One, being here on climate conference, is very important to mention it, that definitely nuclear, it's a source of energy with the lowest quantity of CO2 emissions in comparison even with renewable sources of energy. But second very important argument is that nuclear, it's very reliable and sustainable source of energy, because very often when we talk about ESG agenda, we are too much concentrated only on climate issues. But ESG, it's not only about climate. ESG, it's about reliable and sustainable development. And if you look, what does it mean, the project of construction of nuclear power plant in each and every country? First of all, it's a very huge impulse for the economical growth, for the national GDP growth of the hosting country. Doesn't matter, is it a technology of this country or it's some export technology. In all cases, the average level of localization starts from 25% or even above, depends on a country. It means a lot of new jobs. It's a lot of development in scientific and educational area. It's a new level of life. It's a new level of health. It's a lot of advantages for the people. And I think where now a lot of governments are looking for a clean and sustainable source of energy, they are very seriously thinking about nuclear, because nuclear fits both purposes, fits both goals. And working all over the world, yes, you are right, we are now constructing nuclear power plants in 9 countries. We have portfolio of our projects in even more quantity of countries, in 12 of them, and we are in permanent talks with different governments from different continents. We see a very strong, not just interest, but demand to develop nuclear. And I believe that it's not just momentum, it's a very stable solution, it's a very stable track of development, and I believe that we will see more and more countries involved to the nuclear development all over the world.
Mr. Komarov, thank you. I absolutely agree that we not just need to look at climate, but also look at reliability and sustainability and other factors I suggest, because it's not just climate. We also need to take into account environment. And now I would like to move to Karine. So Electricity de France, so I think one of the leading companies from a perspective of ESG. I know that you are one of the leaders in the ESG area. So maybe you can provide us with insights and maybe share your experience regarding your priorities in ESG, your priorities in low carbon technologies, I don't know, probably maybe hydrogen or any other technologies.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me. Maybe just to remind everyone, so EDF is the French national electricity company, but we're actually not just French. It's about 165,000 employees around the world. We are the leading nuclear operator. And actually, maybe you don't know that, but we are the world's largest generator of electricity with 0 direct carbon emission. I think Rosatom is not far behind us. So, and I think this is very important because, as it was mentioned before, the urgency means that we cannot afford to not use all the low carbon technology that are mature, that are competitive, and of course that includes nuclear. So how do we position nuclear in the ESG vision? EDF has basically put in its corporate bylaws what we call raison d'être in French, which is our purpose. Why do we wake up every day to work at EDF? And there are 4 pillars in this corporate mission. One is carbon neutrality. One is preservation of resources, including biodiversity. One is well-being, and the last one is economic development. And if you look at these 4 pillars, nuclear and renewable together fits perfectly. And I think they are very complementary. And this is what we've been actually trying to push towards all our stakeholders in ESG, is that if you want to succeed, being a sustainable company, having a license to operate, you need to have a diversification of your assets, but you need to put as much money as possible, of course, in what is competitive and mature. And today, both nuclear and renewables are competitive and mature, right? So, of course, they don't fit the same purpose, as we know, because renewables are intermittent. So nuclear, and that's one of the things we've been developing in France as well, we can modulate so that we can move around the load of renewables, and that's why they are very complementary together. So basically today, what we do in every project that we select, we have to respond to these 4 pillars of our corporate mission. And in terms of the development of nuclear, of course today, one of the biggest challenge for us is to extend the life of the existing assets, because that's the most competitive thing you can do. And of course to renew our fleet, because we will need new capacity by 2050, of course, even by 2030. So we have a plan to develop new reactors in France, both from the EPR technology that we have, but also SMR. And that's of course a very important need, the SMR, specifically in countries which have coal assets and want to close their coal assets. We think the SMR is a perfect tool to respond to these needs. And we also have a lot of prospects like Rosatom outside of France, because exactly as was mentioned, there is a strong need for baseload, reliable power, decarbonized, and of course nuclear fits that agenda.
Okay, thank you. So, as I understand, you said about renewables. Can you please share the
You mentioned about hydrogen.
hydrogen and maybe the split of energy mix.
Yes, so I mean, today most of our energy clearly is coming from nuclear, but we are the biggest hydro company in Europe as well. So hydro and nuclear are 97% of our mix with renewables as well, but renewable is still small compared to nuclear and hydro. Okay, so that's the majority will be nuclear and hydro, but we have an objective to more than double our renewable capacity by 2030. Okay, so we will have, we hope, about 60 gigawatts of renewable by 2030, maybe even more if we have a good regulation, because we haven't talked about regulation, but clearly the volatility in electricity prices in the market doesn't work for nuclear because it's highly capital intensive. You need regulated prices. You need to make your investment knowing what will be the price. Okay, so we've been working in the UK, for example, in our nuclear station, we have what we call a contract for difference. So there is a strike price, and if the market price is higher, we give the money back to the consumer. If the market price is lower, then we get the difference with our strike price. That's one way of regulation. The other way would be what we are working for our next station in the UK, which is called the regulated asset-based model, which is what the grid, for example, have in the UK. And that's something which we think is very critical if we want to really be fast in developing new nuclear in Europe.
Okay. So
and hydrogen. Sorry, I forgot your last point. So, of course, we think hydrogen is something that makes a lot of sense, but of course, it has to be competitive. So we come back to the issue of competitiveness. What we like with nuclear and hydrogen together is that, as you know, there's a lot of heat coming from the nuclear energy process. So we think there is a good combination between nuclear and the use of heating, also for hydrogen hub with big industrial hub. So that's what we've been actually putting on the agenda in the UK with our new project called Sizewell C. So we will first use an electrolyzer on our old site, Sizewell B, and we will have our lorries, our trucks, so all the construction site will be decarbonized thanks to the hydrogen with the electrolyzer. Okay. And then we're trying to basically form some form of industrial hub to use the heat and to process the hydrogen there as well. But generally, our hydrogen strategy is about transport and big industries that electricity cannot be used so easily to decarbonize. Okay, so transport, for example, in France, is 30% of the CO2 emission. This is the biggest CO2 emitting sector in France. So this is where we are focusing our energy on the hydrogen strategy.
Okay, okay. So your strategy is nuclear power, and you exploring other sources like an
nuclear and renewable together, complementary. Okay. So both of them, we want to be the leader.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So I would like to move to Sama Leon. So you representing an international organization, World Nuclear Association, and as you know, during pandemic you held some seminars, strategic sessions in format of electronic forums. Right. And I understand, I suggest you discussed a lot of issues with experts, vendors, service providers, and other people in the market. And I suggest you have some insights from these discussions. Right. So, and my questions, the first question, so can you please share your experience from these sessions? And the second question, do you think, so reformulate, so we see that climate change and we see people in the city, the pressure from climate perspective is very high, and we see the urgent for climate actions. So do you see and feel any changes in this area from taking into account the urgency of climate changes?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk to all of you. So maybe for some of you that are not familiar with World Nuclear Association, we really represent the global nuclear industry. And this means we are more than 185 member companies in 44 countries in all continents. And what I think is very important also is that our members do cover the entire nuclear fuel cycle. So we have mining companies, conversion, enrichment, fuel fabrication, obviously utilities, obviously the vendors and the suppliers, the designers of the technology, but also the back end of the fuel cycle. Also, we are talking about companies that are working with radioactive waste management, with used nuclear fuel, and obviously decommissioning. And then last but not least, which is super important, is this entire ecosystem of companies that support the global nuclear industry. For example, nuclear law, for example, nuclear insurance, for example, financing, transport. So that is the strength of an of our organization, where we can really talk about the many different areas that are taking place in nuclear. So you are right. The pandemic has been challenging, because one of the things that I would say that World Nuclear Association is more effective at is to convene the stakeholders in different topics and to try to discuss and address these topics. And obviously, in the middle of the pandemic, this was not as easy. So, and yes, of course, we can do this via Zoom, but all of you know that it's not as effective, right? So we really work our best to make sure that we brought in the virtual room all the stakeholders that were working in these different areas. So, but at the same time, we saw a silver lining, because sometimes in the olden days it was not possible to bring in the same room literally all the players. However, now that we can do some of those things virtually, it is actually feasible to bring many of those people together in the same room. So I think that in the last year and a half, 18 months, we have been able to achieve this relatively good balance between convening all the stakeholders and actually achieving goals that actually move the case for nuclear a little bit further. So as far as lessons learned, so the very first area that we focused this year was financing. And Corinne mentioned this, and I'm sure we will discuss, and also Kirill mentioned this. As you know, nuclear is a capital-intensive energy source, as all the other low-carbon energy sources are. So it is absolutely essential to secure affordable financing for nuclear projects. So that was the discussion that we had in the first e-forum, trying to figure out what are the frameworks, and of course, Corinne mentioned some of those that are going to facilitate, what are the policies, what are the market structures that are going to somehow incentivize investors, incentivize the financing community to see nuclear as a technology in which they want to invest. Then the second of we also had another e-forum on innovation, which is incredibly important because, and of course we have discussed this, it is very important to bring these new technologies and incorporate them in a cost-effective and expeditious manner into nuclear. So when we are looking at, for example, digitalization, artificial intelligence, advanced manufacturing, all those things can be used very effectively in nuclear. Some of them are already being used, but we were able to convene colleagues from all these technologies to give us ideas on how to incorporate these technologies. And then very quickly, one of the other ones that we had that I think is important here, we actually convened several of our companies that have already made a net zero pledge. So we wanted to bring good examples of companies how the nuclear industry not only is contributing to decarbonization because of the product that we produce, which is low carbon electricity and low carbon heat, which is incredibly important, but also many of our companies are already committed to net zero, which tells you that there is a serious commitment to this decarbonization inside the industry. And then very quickly, your second question. I think that there is a little bit of a turning on the opinion. I think that more and more people are starting to reconsider whether nuclear is something that needs to be included in their portfolio for decarbonization. I won't tell you that suddenly everybody's pro-nuclear, because that's not where we are just yet. But I mean, in particular in Europe, after these few months where we have had very high prices of electricity, and in some cases we have seen that the gas reserves were very, very tight, and people were wondering whether they were going to be able to afford their electricity, or they were going to be able to come home tomorrow and they were going to flip the switch and the lights were going to come on or not. I think that a lot of people are starting to consider that there really is a need to bring in all the proven, low carbon, reliable, round-the-clock technologies that we have, and people are starting to look much more carefully and much more open-mindedly to nuclear technology.
Low carbon, low price, and reliable.
Thank you.
So, okay, we move forward. I would like to ask a question to Tom Samson. Mr. Grossi mentioned already the SMR. So it looks like this is a less risky technology from the budget and from timing. But at the same, from the other hand, there is not the same situation taking into account greenhouse gas emissions, comparing to big power plants, nuclear power plants. So do you see and feel, some requests regarding climate change in relation to SMR? And maybe you can also share with us some insights regarding environmental impact of SMR.
Yeah, thank you, Igor, and thank you, Rosatom, for inviting me along to join the panel today. No, I think absolutely our purpose with the Rolls-Royce SMR has been to design a radically different approach to how we build nuclear power plants. And what we've done is we've combined the rich history we have in Rolls-Royce in designing and manufacturing reactors for our submarine business with our experience in building factories and manufacturing highly complex engineered products in our aerospace industry to build something in a factory. So the difference with our SMR is it's trying to eradicate as much as we can the construction risk, and it's trying to build as much of the product in a factory environment, including on site. So one of the first things we do on site, we build a factory. That allows us to manage productivity, protects us from the weather, and it allows us to help drive down the cost and improve the deliverability of the technology. We've also made the choice to use existing technology. So our design is based on a proven PWR with standard fuel. The size of our plant allows us to buy our steam turbines from the market. They're commercially and readily available, all of which helps us drive down the cost. And we've had 4 real criteria to design this facility over the last 5-6 years. Low cost, which is using proven technology, as I say, make it deployable with confidence, so maximizing the amount of work that's done in a factory, make it global and scalable, because to your point, these are smaller than large, but we think we can either put multiple units on a site or provide SMRs to many, many more customers who haven't got the capital to buy a large project. So it's a scalable product as well as global. And the final point I think is also very important. We've designed this to make it investable. So we want to attract private capital to help build out this type of technology, not just in the UK, but globally, to help countries and industries who need a clean energy solution to use SMR and nuclear as part of their portfolio. We see that opportunity now. Many companies are looking at 2030 and beyond. They're doing the math, renewable plus storage, or other solutions that are base load, because that firm power element is really important to many, many industries and consumers, and so they need a firm power solution. And we're trying to bring forward a low cost and deployable solution that then they can finance and then own themselves as well as an asset. So we see our contribution to the clean energy agenda in that way, that it's not just a small product, it's a small product, but we hopefully are going to sell many of them.
What about the environment?
Yeah, well, I think our footprint is, compared to a large project, is much smaller. So one of our SMRs produces about 470 megawatts, so it's a reasonable size power plant. That allows us to put it on many nuclear decommissioned sites around the world where they've had an asset producing nuclear power for the last 50 years or so. So we can deploy the smaller technologies on those sites. The footprint's about 2 football pitches, so it's a very kind of manageable site footprint for giving us flexibility on location. And we also have now built in cooling towers as our standard cooling solution, so we can maximize the flexibility on where we can locate our SMR. And it's absolutely in the same quality of the other nuclear technologies on the large side, because it's producing 24/7 clean energy. in contributing to climate change in that way. And I think there is, in my sense, it's my first COP, but I'm really getting the sense of the narrative that nuclear is now being seen firmly as part of the solution and not a problem. And that's a real turning point for me in the industry, that we're seen as contributing to clean energy. We've got technology, we can deploy it now, and we can really make a difference.
Okay, Tom, thank you. So we discussed technologies, trends, and different insights of people in the market. So I would like to move to thing you also mentioned. So I think financing. So and because absolutely, if you'd like to implement some technologies, if you'd like to implement some carbon neutral solutions, we need financing. So I would like to start with Karin. Because you have some experience, I think, in Europe in green financing. So what is the experience of EDF, Electricity de France, regarding the sustainable finance and green finance, and were there any specific requirements in relation to nuclear companies?
Yeah, I mean, EDF was the first corporate to issue a green bond, sizable green bond. It was 1.4 billion back in 2013. At that time, the corporate green bond market was 7 billion, so we were a big chunk of it. Today, if you look at green bond plus sustainable bond plus social bonds, it's about $600 billion year to date. So you've seen this market has grown exponentially. But green in the European world doesn't include nuclear, okay? And that's the biggest fight we have today, because as was mentioned, Russia, Canada, China, I mean, to be honest, there are like 250 taxonomy today, right? But a lot of them includes nuclear, but not yet the European Union. We are waiting for this to happen. We are, I would say, it's hard to make a call, right? Because it's highly political, as we know. But I think what we've heard recently was the fact that there was no proof of exclusion based on the do not significant harm argument, which was used by the opponents to say, well, okay, it's good for climate, but everything else is bad, okay? But eventually, the European Union mandated the Joint Research Center, so they are research center of the EU, and they published a very exhaustive report saying that we cannot say that nuclear is worse than any other technology in terms of the environment. So we'll see whether we will succeed or not, but of course this is a very important aspect of the financing. If nuclear is not included in the taxonomy, for example, for my company, it's half of my capex and my revenues, which will be excluded from being taxonomy compliant. So it's not a small impact for a company like mine, okay? Now, the question is the taxonomy operable today in the way it's being done? That's another question, right? Because if it's becoming too complex, nobody will use it, right? So there is a challenge to make it relevant, to put the money where it needs to be put as fast as possible, right? And that is very tricky for all corporates, I think, today, because we are snowed under questionnaire, reporting, and at the end, you lose the sense of it. You do reporting for reporting, right? But why do we do it? We need to move fast to deploy the capital. It has to be competitive, as was mentioned. So we need to be clear that nuclear is a benefit for climate, right? As we said, so emergency is here. And if we prove that there is no do not significant harm aspect, which is what we have to do in terms of the waste management, in terms of the recycling of the fuel. So, of course, there is a huge responsibility of all the nuclear operators to prove us right that we are responsible companies in the way we manage the full cycle. But if we are fitting these criteria, then I think we should be able to fit in the taxonomy. That's why we are hoping for, right? But if there was no nuclear in the taxonomy, it doesn't mean that we cannot do nuclear in terms of financing, but that means that we will rely more on our government to give the right signal as well in terms of regulation. That was mentioned earlier. Regulation is key. We need to have a visible price view for us to invest and for investors to put money like low carbon technology, like renewable as well, right? They benefited from feed-in tariff, etc. We need the same for nuclear if we want to go as fast as needed to deploy what is needed for the Paris Agreement.
One more question. Do you have any credits linked to ESG ratings?
Yes, so you're right. In terms of the toolbox, so we have today 7 billion of green bonds. We have 1.25 billion of social bonds. And actually, it's a very interesting argument. On social bonds, we are putting nuclear because nuclear brings local employment. So when we issued our social bonds in the market, we said that we will measure the impact on jobs from the capex we put to the small and medium-sized companies. And a lot of it is nuclear. Okay, 225,000 jobs in France are linked to nuclear. So it's a massive impact. And when we talk about just transition, which is also a very big aspect of the climate discussion, you cannot do the transition without people. It has to be done with and for people, right? Because otherwise, the yellow vest happen in France. We've seen what happened. Very violent riot, okay? We've seen what happened in Chile. That's why the COP happened in Madrid and not in Chile as well. So we need to make the transition with people. We need to have good, decent jobs, and nuclear is also responding to that. So through the social bond, we finance nuclear, okay? And then we have also KPI, ESG KPI for our loans. So for example, I have my carbon trajectory as a KPI. I have my number of electric vehicles as a KPI. I can have diversity as a KPI. So better I am in terms of ESG, lower is my rate in terms of financing. It's a virtuous circle, and we are very keen to make sure that there is a virtuous link between finance and corporate social responsibility.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So let's see how developments in green taxonomy in Europe, because in Russia we already included nuclear. So I would like to move to Russian experience and to Mr. Komarov. So you mentioned, and I mentioned, that we included nuclear in green taxonomy in Russia. So can you please share your experience of Rosatom in relation to financing of nuclear power stations and your projects?
Thank you. Yes, taxonomy is very important, but we should understand that bank system, money system of the world is not national, it's international. That's why we still need to have some consensus between different states, different countries, different continents. The majority of them should vote pro-nuclear. Only in this case, the finance will be available for nuclear purposes. But nevertheless, we are not waiting for something. We are on our way, and it's a very well-known fact. We are executing the first so-called BO project in nuclear, build on operate. We are doing it in Turkey on Akku site. We are constructing 4 nuclear units on the base of this model. When we are designer of the plant, when we construct this plant for our money and for our own risk, and then we sell the electricity for Turkish government for the fixed price. And it's definitely very important to create financial sources for such a type of a project. And what we succeeded already, it's a very interesting example for us. We attracted already $400 million for financing for such project on the base of ESG principles and on the base of green principles. We have some indicators, some obligations, like, for example, regular environmental monitoring and annual reports about this monitoring. We have some specific requirements for our sub-suppliers, some process of certification of these suppliers to be able to check that everything is based on green and sustainable technologies, and some other aspects, but they allowed us to have more cheaper financing than regular is. And we believe that it's just a beginning, it's just a start. The more we officially name nuclear as a green source of energy, the more officially we include it in different type of taxonomies in different countries, the more available are sources on the financial market. Because look, all banks, very difficult to find a bank which can work only in frames of national system, and at the same time will be available for financing of nuclear projects, because nuclear projects requires a lot of money usually, and means the bank should be ready to work not only with rubles. Banks should be able to work with all international financial resources. That's why we need, the majority in naming nuclear green and sustainable.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to move to the UK experience. So we see that not many countries at this moment invest in nuclear power, but at the same time UK is investing. We see Rolls-Royce also, you mentioned SMR technology, and I understand that you invest in the technology and would like to develop it. So when we're talking about the project in, project in nuclear power station or SMR project, you need huge investments, so you need to finance it. At the same time, you face the low price, regulatory price, so you need to find the balance.
Right.
So you mentioned about the regulatory asset-based model in UK. So as a solution. And also have some numbers, as I know, the UK government going to invest about £250 million in this project, and also seeking for private investments in amount of £300 million. So my question, so taking this all into account, so this background, which investors in UK are interested investing in nuclear power? And what are the drivers for this investor to invest in this project?
So the money you mentioned there is actually the money that will fund Rolls-Royce SMR Limited. We're creating a standalone company that will be majority owned by Rolls-Royce, and we're bringing in new capital investors alongside Rolls-Royce. We'll probably be announcing that in the next day or two up in the UK. We've secured the 210 million grant funding from the government, and that's going to be combined with that private capital. So that's to fund the technology development that will allow us to enter the generic design assessment process with the regulators in the UK and take the technology forward. But in parallel to that, we want to now secure deployment commitments so we can start delivering the technology here in the UK and globally. So our next focus then is how do we bring in financial solutions to enable us to deploy the technology. And as everybody said, the taxonomy is a huge piece because there's something of a dilemma. We listen to all the world financial institutions saying they have trillions and trillions of pounds and dollars to invest in clean energy, and we have nuclear that is looking for accessing that money. So we've got to somehow bridge the gap. I think our goal to do that is by designing a technology that is lower risk, lower cost. By using the factory-based model, we can create a predictable factory-built commodity. That creates a lower risk solution for investors, so that helps attract capital. And also on top of that, we also need to look to the government to create the right policy frameworks, whether it's the CFD, whether it's a regulated asset base, to provide some certain commitments in terms of the deployment of technology in various countries. But we're also seeing, particularly with the smaller capital needed for SMR, now industrials looking to deploy SMR technology directly. So we're moving away from nuclear being a state sovereign decision in countries to being a solution to help industries and commercial companies solve their own clean energy needs. So we're talking with industrialists, we're talking to major companies who have large volumes of constant needs for clean electricity, data center companies that want to produce synthetic fuels, because nuclear has also got an important role to play, not just in grid-connected electricity, the traditional history of the industry, but to combine nuclear, as we've said, about producing hydrogen, synthetic aviation fuel, and also many off-grid applications that can also then benefit from the flexibility of an SMR. So it's really a combination. Ultimately, we've got to deliver low-cost, cost-competitive energy to consumers, but we've got to finance it with a range of private capital, government support, and hopefully industrials and corporations investing in the technology.
Okay, just to clarify, am I right that any industrial company can buy SMR and decrease scope 2 in production in their greenhouse gas emissions? So there is no limitation from government?
So again, it depends on the various structures, but I mean, essentially, what my ambition with this SMR is to kind of create a nuclear IPP, so an independent power producer that's owned by financial institutions, is an operator who operates the asset. We have a turnkey contract to deliver a fully integrated power plant, and then there's an offtake, whether it's a CFD, whether it's a PPA. And so that's how much of the combined cycle world was exploited over the last 30 years and rapidly expanded and delivering power plants around the world by bringing in private capital with technology and operations and offtake. And so I think there's a way that SMR can try to create that kind of ecosystem to make nuclear more accessible to many, many more countries and corporations and businesses over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
If you allow me to add some couple of words, we are doing now a very similar model already in real life. We have a very big copper mine in the north of Russia, in Chukotka. It's a very far away region, not connected with a centralized electricity grid with the country. It's a very big mine, as far as I know. It's when it will be developed finally, it will be the biggest copper mine in the world. And the problem is that the total lack of electricity, because the mine is very well known since middle of previous century, but it was not possible to develop it because of lack of electricity. And what we did just recently in September, we signed, as Tom said, very similar model. We signed a contract with the owner of this mine that we are constructing 4 floating nuclear power plants with a total capacity of approximately 400 megawatts to supply electricity to this mine during 40 years. And why we were chosen by this company to do this? Because it's not a governmental project. It's a totally private story, because we are financing this from banks on the base of this offtake of electricity. Yep. It will be take or pay contract for the whole amount of capacity. But why they have chosen? Initially, it was a story that initial idea was to use LNG because as a source of energy, because we have a lot of gas and we have a lot of LNG in the north of Russia on the Arctic shore. But when they started to discuss the potential price for electricity, and they are interested to have a contract for next 40 years, 40, because it's a lifetime of this mine. And nobody is ready on the base of natural resources to guarantee any fixed or even predictable price for electricity, because everybody will tell, okay, gas is now X dollar megawatt per hour, then it will be twice more, or maybe like we see now 10 times more or 20 times more, and it's immediately reflected to the cost of electricity. Because if you look at a gas plant or coal plant, 80% of the cost of final cost of electricity, it's the cost of fuel. In nuclear power plant, it's less than 3% if you are talking about natural uranium. That's why we are able, being at the same time owner of uranium resources, we are able to sign a very long-term contract for 40 years, and we just did it. And it will be just first model for us, but it's now has a very strong interest. A lot of big companies are going to us asking, is it possible to repeat the same schemes? That's why I believe that what Tom is saying, it's it's very real, sounds very realistic. It definitely still needs a lot of governmental resources in question of regulations, because in this case, we do not supply a plant, we supply an electricity. We remain an owner of the plant, and we remain an operator, and it's not so easy to be operator of the nuclear power plant. But with the assistance of government, with the assistance of regulations, we are able to realize the model.
Thank you, Zisha. So very interesting. So, and my questions goes to Sam Leon. So about green financing and green taxonomy in Europe. So what is your expectations? What is your foresight regarding?
Expectation.
Yeah.
So I forgot at home my crystal ball. Sorry. No. So well, I mean.
So your highest expectation.
Yeah,
okay.
my expectation. So no, we've heard from Korean. So it's been a little bit back and forth. But we have seen that a number of countries in the European Union are becoming much more vocal as far as the importance that they plays in ensuring that this taxonomy is going to be science-based and is going to be technology neutral, which of course means that nuclear energy will need to be part of the technologies that are considered as sustainable. And of course, we already heard that there's already the science there, because the report that the Joint Research Center provided was a solid report that provided all the information that is needed for the policymakers to understand that nuclear energy is in fact just as sustainable as all the other low carbon energy sources that are currently already included. So I really am thinking that particularly in view of what we discussed earlier, the very serious spikes in price of electricity and the maybe the energy insecurity that some countries have experienced, I really think that hopefully cool heads will prevail, and nuclear energy will be included in a same footing as other low carbon energy sources in the taxonomy. But the other thing that I wanted to say, though, and we've discussed this, the EU taxonomy is obviously very important. It has become incredibly visible, so we all have been paying attention to this. But as Corinne and Kirill mentioned, there is a lot of initiatives all over the place, all over the world, to put in place ESG financing, climate financing, sustainable financing, whichever way you want to call it. So we from World Nuclear Association, we really are paying a lot of attention. We are trying to map all these different initiatives, because unfortunately they are all different. They are not meshing very well with each other. Some of them have some expectations, some of them have different expectations. So we are trying to keep an eye, we are trying to map all of them, trying to figure out how does nuclear technology fit in all these ESG and climate financing efforts. Because as we said, it is really essential that all the low carbon technologies that exist right now are deployed as quickly as possible. I mean, otherwise we stand no chance to meet these 1.5 degrees goals that we have. But of course, for that we are going to need financing. We are going to need affordable financing. So it is very important that all these ESG frameworks are going to recognize the value of all low carbon technologies, of course, including nuclear. So yeah, so we are working on that, and it's incredibly important.
Okay, so like some summary of our discussion. So we discussed the trends, and absolutely the nuclear power is climate neutral, low carbon, low price, reliable, sustainable. So that's absolutely clear.
Yes.
At the same time, we need affordable investment because it's a huge project. Yeah. And also we need support from government, at least in terms of taxonomy. So in Russia already implemented, so now the turn for Europe. So I also understand some support from regulation, making the environment in this area more favor for private investments.
Yeah. And if I may say as well, international regulatory collaboration.
Collaboration.
So that we have
collaboration.
We don't have every country trying to regulate and make it difficult to deploy the technology, that somehow the regulators collaborate and try to create some more common frameworks.
Okay. If anybody wants to make a final remarks.
I just wanted to share one thing. I've been having lots of conversations the last week, and I got asked this really interesting question from somebody not inside the nuclear industry. And they said, if somebody was to come back to speak to you from the future and they would say 3 things to you, what might they say that would kind of highlight this issue? I say, well, they could come back and say, you had the solution, you didn't deploy enough of it, and look what happened. So nuclear is essential to tackle climate change. We need to collaborate better as an industry and more to talk to people outside of our industry, to change people's perceptions, and we need to try to really tackle this issue around financing, taxonomy, and how we access the capital. If you get the access to the capital, we change public perception. There's no reason why nuclear in the next 10, 20, 30 years can have a massive impact on climate change. Looking back the last 20 years, we didn't do enough nuclear. We should have done 2 or 3 or 4 times as much.
Yes.
We've got to make up for that in the next 3 decades.
Okay.
So if you allow me, very positive signs that we are sitting here on COP26 and talking about nuclear. Because I remember just 5 years ago when it was COP22 in Marrakesh, it was very difficult even to have a permission from the management of the conversation to have some nuclear talks. And it was our common event together with Agneta Riesing, who was predecessor of Summer in World Nuclear Association. We had more journalists on this very, very small event than all event in comparison during this Marrakesh session. And it means for me that we are on the right track. It's very optimistic sign that we are here and we are discussing nuclear. But I agree with Tom. It was a very long break in a massive nuclear construction all over the world, and we need now to do much more. We need now to be much more active than in previous time period to compensate this break and to bring back nuclear on a position which nuclear should be.
So can I ask? So I would like to add to what you both just said. I mean, I think it is true. The nuclear community, we do need to work together, maybe even better than we've done it. There is a urgency that we need to instill on ourselves to take advantage of this window of opportunity that we have right now. I think that we have regained some of these lost know-how and skills, but I think that we are back and we can start building very fast. So this is on us. But at the same time, I think that it's just as important that the policymakers, I mean, governments, they have a very important role, and they really need to be bold. They need to. I mean, sometimes they need to be courageous, politically courageous. I mean, because sometimes nuclear is not the most popular solution immediately, but of course, when you actually take the right decisions, that actually can make a huge difference. And so, if we have bold politicians, bold policymakers that can instill confidence in the financial markets, that are going to put in place policies that are that provide a level playing field for all low carbon technologies, that is going to be enormously important.
Okay.
I think on my side, I would like to finish on education. I think if you look in France, I think there was a survey that shows that more than 80% of the 16 to 24 years old thought that nuclear emits CO2.
Right.
So we have this massive challenge to make things right on the first understanding of climate, okay? So when you see, the smoke outside of the chimney, it's not CO2, okay? It's water, okay? So this is the basic, but this is where we also have to work and start to make sure that everybody, every citizen understand the basics of climate. Once this is done, because now they feel the impact, we see the extreme weather events, so they know there is no, there's a bit of climate skeptics, but not many more, right? But they still don't see nuclear sometimes as being good for climate. So we first need to do this education, and then we talk a lot about the E, but I think the S, and I mentioned the just transition, the S is rising massively. The biodiversity as well. Land use for nuclear is super positive compared to other sources of technology or low carbon technology. So that's why we also can put nuclear on a good light. So education and talk about the social impact, jobs, decent jobs, quality jobs, and biodiversity. And all of it together, I think, will also be convincing for the policymakers to be braver, as you mentioned.
Okay. So, thank you all for very interesting discussion, for open discussion. So let's applaud our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
conversation. Let me introduce myself. My name is Polina Leon. I'm Chief Sustainability Officer of Rosatom Atomic State Corporation of Russia. And here with me is my colleague, Boris Arseev, who is Deputy Head of International Business of Rosatom. And we also have our two speakers online, who are Paul Wynn, Chairman and Director General of the International Irradiation Association, and also we have online Giovanni Gargoni, who is Director General of Regional Healthcare and Social Affairs Agency of Puglia, Italy. Hello colleagues, thank you for joining us. And actually today morning we had a very interesting, very interesting conversation about climate effects of nuclear energy, and even we have discussed broader effects of nuclear energy as social effects and infrastructure effects, together with complexity of questions of attracting financing for our nuclear power plants projects. But the thing is that nuclear industry is much more wider than only energy one, and so we today at this session we are going to discuss on how nuclear technologies, how nuclear appliances can help to deal with global problems, and we mean 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which cover different challenges. So, for example, human health or hunger problem, which are still with us and still are very sound in some regions. Probably I will facilitate our discussion a little bit. And so my first question for Boris is, what about Sustainable Goal number 2? Let's start with this one. I mean, zero hunger. How can nuclear technologies can help to deal with that?
Polina, thank you for introduction. Once again, I am Boris Arseev. I'm responsible for business development at Rosatom. And thank you. I was too fast.
Wow.
First of all, dear friends, nuclear technologies contribute to the quality of life. And it's terrifying that today in the 21st century, the humanity is still struggling against the so interesting human problems like hunger, the lack of drinking water, and access to health care. But really it's true, and today the Sustainable Development Goals are covering these problems, and we as Rosatom think a lot about that, and not only think and speak, we are doing a lot. And may I share some kind of information with you. For example, every year people throw away 1.3 billion tons of food. Due to expiration date or because the product was caused by bacteria. Is it a lot or no? What do you think? Basically, it's 1/3 of the food production over the world annually. It's a huge amount. And the this irrational use of food is extremely urgent issue for some countries in the world, especially speaking about regions as Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and maybe other countries. But it's really very important and a huge amount. And the problem is not only in food production. It depends how was organized the long-term storage of this food. Because during the storage or during the transportation, it's a huge impact from some kind of some bacteria. And today, as Rosatom, we have some methods that we develop in that method. It's called cold pasteurization. What it means? It's ionizing radiation treatment. It helps to save the products during being in storage and during transportation. And let me share with you some digits that cold pasteurization allows to increase the shelf life from 2 to 10 times. And it allows to destroy up to 99% of malignant bacteria and viruses.
Wow, I think that that could be also used for our masks.
Yeah, it's very important because cold pasteurization kills pathogenic microorganisms and larvae of harmful insects, preserving the natural properties of the product. And by the way, food irradiation is used in more than 60 countries. And every year, 500,000 tons tons of food are processed every year in different countries. Generally, of course, it's a small amount. It's it's a modest but extremely important contribution to nuclear technologies to the fight against hunger. However, the shelf life of food is not the only issue that needs to be addressed. Insect pests. Sorry for my English because it's some specific names and specific phrases that I have pronounced very clear for our audience, such as tsetse files and even moths. And this is another serious problem that leads to global food loss. And sometimes insects damage up to 40% of entire harvest. It's a huge amount, speaking about food, and so problem like a hunger. And we have the method that so-called the sterile insect technique, or SIT for short. This is the most environment-friendly control method ever developed. It has been used successfully in more than 60 years. And it's currently used in all over the world.
Yes.
And the International Atomic Energy Agency has been conducting the applied research for more than 5 decades and transfer solutions to the countries for use in agriculture. In the beginning, I mentioned about different methods of using nuclear technologies, and the main value of nuclear technologies is multi-purposeness.
Yeah,
and I
actually,
hope that a few examples that I mentioned help you to understand about this.
Yes, that's what I'm going to ask you. What about first of all, I think that it's really important that that we have such technologies for food saving because it's really vital in a situation, for example, of hot temperature, because the terms of there are no much freezing in some countries, so it would really help. And so maybe let's talk a little bit about the goal number 3. I mean the good health and well-being, because you know, another huge problem of today is cancer and other diseases. And what about this one? How nuclear technologies can help?
Yes, Paulina, you are absolutely right that you mentioned this huge area that is very important in our life, and especially with using nuclear technologies, it's health, it's our life. And let me remind you a few facts about nuclear technologies. For example, centuries, the doctors dreamed about opportunity to have a look into the body of the patient without cutting this, without surgery of this body. And in 1895, if my memory doesn't fail me, they would discover the X-rays.
I noticed.
Yeah, and the true and the dreams came true, because from that time it's very easier for doctors and very comfortable for the patient to get some kind of procedures, speaking about diagnostics and speaking about treatment and some procedures and services. And today the X-ray is absolutely an ordinary procedure. We use it everywhere, and we are very comfortable, for example, coming to the dentist or other doctor and having this procedure, having these X-rays absolutely calmly for us.
Yep.
No protests for that, because we understand it. And by the way, this is the special radiation procedure. This is the nuclear technology. And speaking about X-rays, I can share with you some additional, benefits from that. That today, using the X-rays, and sorry, I forgot to mention that from discovering the X-rays, it was there was a trigger to create the new kind of equipment. The equipment that help people to get the additional service, medicine service, and explained like the absolutely ordinary procedure. And a specialized area of medicine that uses the radiopharmaceuticals is called nuclear medicine. And nuclear medicine helps doctors to diagnose this on the first stages, some kind of, sorry for my bad English.
It's for cancer diagnosis.
For cancer,
right.
it's the main problem, of course, and
So
for cancer, it's
actually my mother
the most
did this.
very important to make a diagnosis, then the therapy and services using the radiopharmaceuticals. And now it's impossible to imagine healthcare system without nuclear technology, speaking about the positron emission tomography, radiopharmaceuticals used in procedures about the manufacturing of research reactors and produce radionuclides. A long list of special terms and topics, of course. And Rosatom developing the nuclear medicine from the production of isotopes to effective medical treatment for many years. I mentioned it just for your understanding. We are not just talking about these technologies. We are doing a special services and producing the equipment for that. It's our contribution to the sustainable goals. And which role does nuclear play in medicine? Probably me, working in nuclear cooperation, overestimate its role. Let's ask Paul Wayne, Chairman and Director General of the International Irradiation Association. Paul, what do you think? Are radiation technologies so important?
Actually, I guess.
Thank you, Boris.
Yeah?
Thank you, Boris. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. I've got a few slides, so if the tech team could put those up. But in general, what we're talking about here is I would distinguish between industrial irradiation and nuclear medicine. And I think Giovanni is going to speak about nuclear medicine. I'm going to speak a little bit about irradiation technologies and the various applications. So I'd like to just take a few moments to talk to you about the applications of irradiation, a little bit about the technology, quickly about one of the alternatives, and then some of the environmental applications that these technologies can help to play. So the first point really is that irradiation is little known and even less well understood, and yet it affects all our lives on almost a daily basis. In fact, I would guess that most of the people present at COP26 will have come in contact with materials that have been irradiated on a fairly regular basis. The two biggest applications for radiation are the sterilization of single-use medical devices, single-use products. And the other one is cross-linking, polymerization of materials. So sterilization would be anything from simple bandages and blood collection tubes through to complex hip joints, prostheses of all sorts. So it's a vast array, and about almost half of all single-use medical devices used around the world are sterilized using radiation technologies. So a vast amount. And so the other big technology is the application is polymerization. So the cross-linking and degrading of polymer chains. And that goes into a vast array of materials. It's actually the biggest application. And so if you're using aircraft, aerospace, engineering, defense, automotive, rail, space exploration, all of those sort of things benefit from this technology. If you go into a greater array of products, you've just referred to sterile insect technology, and I think I would break down food radiation and phytosanitary as slightly different. So you can treat products for food safety, to avoid illness arising from microorganisms, and for food security, to prevent wastage. But the biggest application today, and the one that's growing the most, is probably phytosanitary, which is where you want to avoid the transmission of biohazards, of fruit flies and other contaminants from one region of a country or to another part of the world, another country. And that's quite a big area these days. And if you think of the concern that Australia would have if you're taking fruits into the country, it's the same. If you're moving product even within Australia, but bringing them from one country to another, you want to make sure that your borders are biosecure. So irradiation can play a role there. It can play a role in plastic, wooden flooring. By injecting monomers into and then solidifying them using irradiation, you can improve their strength and their resistance. A lot of polymers are processed in order to improve their resistance to heat, abrasion, solvents, and so forth, and therefore to make them safer. So it's a safety. Often this is to do with safety. Electronics are electronic components. You could be involved in hardening of electronics that are used in spaceflight, where they're exposed to forms of radiation, in high altitude flight, in nuclear reactors, and so forth. You can process gemstones in order to improve their color and therefore their value. So topaz, when you process it, changes from a sort of orange color to a blue. You can process blood. Blood is treated to prevent graft virus host disease in patients that are having blood transfusions. You can treat tissue, skin, bones, and amniotic membranes to reduce the infection resulting from allografts and so forth. In textile dyeing, one of the biggest problems today is wastewater contaminants of our waterways. And by using radiation technology, you can, in fact, 20% or so of all industrial waste globally is coming from the textile industry. So you can use irradiation to clean and separate the biological organic pollutants that are in the water. You can use it and cultural heritage to protect and save and the deterioration of items that could be wood, parchment, textiles, and so forth that could be damaged by bacteria and fungi that are present. So one of the most famous examples of that was Ramses II in 1977 was treated in France in order to stabilize it and protect it from deterioration. Gas treatment, if you're looking at flue gas treatment, so if power stations often are pumping out NOx and SO2 into the atmosphere, this technology can be used to reduce those pollutants by up to 85%. So and pharma, a lot of the good manufacturing practice requires the use of microbiologically clean ingredients when in that area as well. So I could go on. There's a vast array of materials that's processed that we would come into contact with on a daily basis, whether you're sitting on a plane, whether you're actually having treatment in a hospital. There is something that is that will have benefited from the radiation. If we go on to the next slide, I'll just put this in perspective. When we talk about radiation, this is ionizing radiation. There are two basic ways in which you can generate the energy. One is from a gamma source, which is cobalt-60, which is a specifically manufactured radioisotope that decays back to nickel about 150 years. It has a half-life of 5.3 years. So it's a specifically manufactured byproduct of using nuclear reactors for power generation. Or you can use electricity. So you can use electron beam or X-ray systems. And generally, gamma is the system that historically has been used for sterilization of medical products. Electron beam is the technology that's been used for polymerization, for surface treatments of products. X-ray is a relatively new treatment. I would argue that gamma probably has a lower carbon footprint, but it depends very much on the way that you're generating your electricity. But one of the problems with X-ray is the rate of conversion, because you only get a conversion from power input to output of about 8 to 15% with X-ray. So it's each of these technologies are complementary. Each of them have their particular strengths, and therefore they're used extremely widely for the benefit of all these applications that I've just mentioned. We go on to the next slide. Go to the next slide. This one's, no, it's one back from there, actually. Should be another one. Alternative technologies. This is, if we look at, well, what's the alternative to the sterilization using irradiation technologies? So gamma, electron beam, or X-ray. And the main alternative that accounts for pretty well the other half of the sterilization capacity is ethylene oxide gas. Pre-1987, it was mixed with freons, CFCs, in order to treat the product. But in the Montreal Protocol in 1987, we wanted to restrict the use of greenhouse gases, CFCs. And so the technology could have actually been effectively outlawed, but it's so valuable in it complements what you can do with irradiation. And so the technology has changed over time. Concern then was about mixing it with CFCs. Now it's about ethylene oxide in it itself. And so there's a lot of work being done to reduce the concentrations of the gas and to clean the gas through scrubbers and abaters before you release it to atmosphere. So whatever technology you're using, if you want sterile medical product, you're going to have to use something that kills bacteria, and that's quite a harsh environment. I would argue that irradiation is a much better solution for the environment, but it can't do everything. And so EO is also required. Next slide. So here I just want to touch on a few examples. There are many examples that scientists over the last 30, 40, 50 years have developed that actually can address environmental challenges that we face. I mentioned at the outset the wastewater. 20% of all wastewater is coming from the textile industry. China, using a company called CGN, built put 7 accelerators together. This is in Guangdong province. It's connected with a textile manufacturing facility. Came on stream in 2020, and that's used to treat the wastewater before it's released into the oceans, into the waterways. Another example is in India. They're using gamma and electron beam. There's a number of facilities now where they're taking human effluent, human waste and sludge, and then through a hydrogenization process, they can stabilize that, they can remove the harmful bacteria and so forth, and use it as a fertilizer in the countryside. So those are two examples, but then you look at microplastics. There's been things that the IEA have been doing recently on that they're talking about 1/3 by 2025, 1/3 of the, microplastics in the oceans will be 1/3 of compared to fish, And they believe that by 2050, at the rate we're going, there'll be more microplastics by weight in the oceans than there will be fish. So addressing and cleaning, and these technologies can help with that. Go back to flue gas treatments and so forth. You can use flue gas treatments, electron beams, and to actually remove NOx and SO2 from before it's released from these waste stacks. These things are not well used today, and I'm sure it comes down largely to economics, its cost. But there are solutions, and there are many different ways in which radiation technologies can help the environment. So the final slide is just a wrap up and to say, so I would just say that you're already coming into contact with the ways in which irradiation is helping the environment already. It could do a lot more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Paul. That sounds really great, and looks like radiation technologies are really very much spread through our life. And my question is actually this radiation words. Is that are they really safe, these technologies? So I understand that they are very widely applied, and please share with us what's about safety and security, and probably if we remember about the Sustainable Development Goals, I have a question about the goal number 12, that is responsible production. So please, maybe you can cover this part of subject.
First of all, let me say thank you, Paul, and taking the opportunity, I would like to thank your association for supporting and promoting irradiation technologies. Thank you once again, Paul. And let me explain the additional area of using the nuclear technologies. I need my slide, my picture about Alex,
can you help us with the slides of Boris, just to put them on the screen back? So I think we can move on, and the slide will appear somewhere. Yeah.
Okay, I have already mentioned about X-rays, and
here are they.
Oh, yes, nice. Let me find the. No, it's too early.
Okay.
About industry, where the X-rays are using everywhere in the different areas. Maybe you haven't known about this, but generally having this opportunity to see inside the metal and through and penetrate through some kind of constructions, it's a huge assistance for producing different kind of equipment, especially if you have a very big forges and casting and welding constructions. It's opportunity to see and check the quality, to find some kind of defects inside and deep cracks in welding errors. And the irradiation methods and not destructive monitoring system helps in the construction of bridges, buildings, and other construction. And our specialists are doing it every day and everywhere in all fields of industry. And once again, it's a using of nuclear technologies. And this area of using can be as an additional and huge event to explain all kind of details. That is why let's indeed get back to medicine. Talking about medicine, as we mentioned, one very important area for nuclear technology, and I would say maybe the most important for nuclear technology, of course, it's a cancer epidemic. And I would say, experts discussed that the statistics by 2040, the number of new cancer cases will increase by almost 50%.
Yeah, that's really a huge problem all over the world.
Very big problem, and the nuclear methods play a crucial role in addressing the issue related to the prevention, diagnosis and treatment of cancer. And speaking about, once again, about Rosatom, we producing the different equipments and prepare some kind of services and using it everywhere and worldwide. But right now, speaking about different territories, we have our participator, Mr. Giovanni Gargoni, Director General of Regional Healthcare and Social Affairs Agency of Puglia in Italy. And my question to Giovanni, what will you say? What role does nuclear medicine play in Italy?
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for inviting us and for hosting us. I want to thank Rosatom, iStop JC, and COP26 organization. The role in medicine of radionuclides, radiopharmaceuticals, is huge, and I guess not all deployed, not all the capabilities, not all the possibilities are really till now employed and deployed on cancer treatment, even though in other diseases. I prepared just a few slides. Can you share my presentation? Okay, thanks. Next slide. First of all, who we are and where we are. I represent Apulia region, next one, and next slide, and the regional agency for health and social care. Apulia region is a region located in southern Italy with 4 million people and with an annual healthcare budget of more than 7 billion euro distributed among 6 local health authorities, to research hospitals, to university hospitals, 33 private hospitals with public accreditation to operate, and more than 500 private social providers. Next one. Next slides. Thanks. ARES Puglia is the regional government agency and charged for innovation in health and social sector, and I mean product innovation, process innovation, knowledge innovation, and these are, you can see, our 4 main skill areas: epidemiology and care intelligence, epidemiological surveillance, big data analytics, and so on, technology assessment and scientific research, system innovation, social inclusion and innovation, and quality, healthcare quality. And the 4th one, e-health and digital health. Next slide. In terms of scientific care need, Apulia region is a typical region of a developed country. So with a huge prevalence of chronic illness, 4 out of 10 citizens are chronic patients, and they use almost 90% of the regional health budget. So a region aging, a region chronic ill, and as we try daily, hopefully a region active and healthy aging. Next slide. In terms of cancer care need, I report only few figures. Currently, we have in the region 180,000 citizens that live currently daily with a cancer diagnosis since 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 and more years. More of them are long survivor. And in terms of incidence, we have 22,000 new diagnoses of cancer annual, and each day at the end of this day, 60 patients, 60 citizens will have a cancer diagnosis. Our rates are lower than the average of Italy, but it remains always not good news. Next slide. To face cancer and to take cancer challenges, we designed in 2017 a regional cancer network based on a comprehensive cancer centers framework and managed by a 3 tiers organization. A regional oncology council for strategic direction, at the second level, at the second tier, a regional oncology board for executive process. At the first line, the patient line, 4 wide areas integrated cancer departments. Our cancer network has many points of excellence, many points of strengths, but it has also many weaknesses, and among them we can mention shortage of radionuclides for cancer treatment. We currently use radionuclides for cancer diagnosis. I mean, positron emission tomography and so on, also for neurodegenerative diseases. But we have a shortage of interesting and efficient radionuclides for cancer treatment. So in 2019, next slide, we signed a memorandum of understanding between Sechenov University, Rosatom, and Apulia region to pursue many common aims and objectives in cancer care, and among them also an experimentation carried out in September 2019 with lutetium-177. Lutetium-177 is an isotope used for prostate cancer. And as you know, or as few knows, space, distance, and time are enemies of radiopharmaceutical efficacy. So in Italy, where so many decades ago we made the choice to not to pursue nuclear energy provision, it's a gap. That's a gap to have closer the availability of interesting and efficient radionuclides. So we carried out this experimentation. Lutetium-177 made a journey long more than 5,000 kilometers in the form of semi-finished product. And from Ekaterinburg through Moscow to Warsaw, till Bari, where the University Hospital Policlinico radiopharmacy finished the product with a high standard of quality. Next one. Obviously, that's only a piece of the whole cooperation between Russia and the Apulia region. We have at least 3 common directions. First of all, radiopharmaceutical production. For lutetium, for just mentioned lutetium-177, but also for actinium-225, used for prostate cancer, used for some forms of breast cancer and myelomas. And the second direction of cooperation, the strictly scientific cooperation for clinical research, and also the radiopharmacy profit enhancing, with not only scientific research, but also development, economic and development and social development between the two countries. Lastly, lesson learned. Lesson learned. First of all, distance, according to our prime experience, we can see that distance is no more a constraint, that nuclear waste is an interesting health resource, but at some conditions. And the conditions resides all in the term mostly used in these days. And the term is ecosystem. In COP26, we talked about climate ecosystems, but there are also economic ecosystem, social ecosystem, and industry ecosystem, and innovation ecosystem. And they are all the same gear wheels related. So only if we think, design, implement, and manage in terms of ecosystem and outcomes ecosystem instead of product of a single provider, we can use all the possibilities of the radionuclides, both for the cancer diagnosis and for cancer treatment. That's all for now. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Giovanni. That was really impressive, and I really like your idea that these nuclear appliances, they are much more wider than only about climate. It's very important that we have a solution to save lives, for example. So, Boris, the floor is yours now.
Yeah, thank you once again, Giovanni, for your contribution, for your attitude, and generally for your work. Because our health, I think, is the most important thing that should be or can be in our life. The other changes, climate and agriculture, is like a supporting areas of our life and our health. And nuclear technologies save lives, help people to live longer, and generally it's a huge benefit. But at the same time, it's additional issue to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Why? Is the question. And the answer is so complicated. And I would say the combination between question and answer. We have these technologies, but it's very difficult to achieve the benefits. And my personal understanding that the problem is that we have to inform. We have to have the conversation with different people, with different group of people, to explain about the useful of radiation technologies, their safety. And we have to change our attitude for them. We have to use it and develop these technologies for our life, for increasing the level of our life. That is the main idea, and I'm absolutely sure that we have to continue the same conversations on the different floors with different people, or for some people maybe to repeat and having some kind of answers for their questions, because I am absolutely understand that information about nuclear technology should be absolutely clear for the ordinary people, for all of us. And once again, the nuclear technology help in our life and do our life much better.
Yeah, here we have the goal number 17, that is about the partnership and communication and transparency. And so, yes, that's very good that nuclear industry has become nowadays quite open and communicating widely.
That is why we are here,
yes.
trying to explain the additional information.
That's right.
And by the way, please do not be too hard on me. I am not a professionals in medicine and maybe in, in the atomic nuclear, speaking about this like a fundamental science, but I try to explain the information on the common level, like you, to share with you what I know, and I hope you know now.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Paul and Giovanni, and thank you very much for your listening. And now, actually, I think we have a time for 1 or 2 questions. So please, yes, please, we have a microphone here.
Thank you so much. My name is Kyle, and I'm an observer from Indiana University, from the USA. And Boris, at the end, you talked about the need to explain to the public the benefits of these technologies. As for the non-energy aspects and also for nuclear energy as well, how do you think we can best go about explaining to the public the benefits and trying to show all the good that nuclear can do?
As I understood right, you asked me how it's better to explain to the population, for the citizens, for the people. I think it's like we do right now, to organize some special events and having the opportunity for our questioners to ask, first of all. It means we should be open using websites, exhibitions, conferences, direct questions to our company, for example, because we know a lot of this technology, we produce the equipment, and that is why it's, I would say, it should be like a task, first of all, for us to share with you and organize this communication, and using the common examples from our life, share this information with our experts that can prove the real practice in the different areas, agriculture, medicine, industry. For example, having a lot of enterprises and machinery building companies in our company, our divisions, we use the X-rays and these methods of radiological control every day in different areas. And we absolutely ready to show you. And we have a group of people visiting our enterprises to see our processes. And that is the additional opportunity to be opened and to be ready to explain everything about these technologies. I think this is the method, to be opened and ready to explain on the different levels, non-professional, on the professional level.
Yeah.
Have I answered? Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much. So I think that we have run out of time a little bit. So probably
maybe for last question, if anybody has.
One more question we can take, and so do. No. Okay. So here we are. Thank you very much. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, colleagues, once again.
Yeah, for your participation.
Our pleasure to see you and be together in this conversation.
Yeah, and by the way, in I think in 10 minutes we will continue our presenting of nuclear technologies appliances, and there would be there would be presented quite an interesting, to my opinion, project about these radiation appliances in Africa, in South Africa, for Renatop. So it's really a very impressive experience, very impressive project. So please, if you have some time, please stay and enjoy this project presentation. And thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Включаем?
Which is the discussion inclusive human resources strategies for the nuclear sector, balanced diversity. So we are incredibly happy to be with you today. I would like to greet those who are in person with us and online connected. We have really great speakers connected online and in person. It's incredibly great to be with you today. So as you all know, human is a core element of the nuclear industry at all. So we're developing the human potential, and oh, hello, it's so great to see you right now. We can see you really well. Hello, how can we, yeah.
Hello.
Wonderful, wonderful. And human is in the core of the industry. The nuclear industry and nuclear companies are recognizing human potential and paying a lot of attention to the education and skills development, STEM training, and science, and of course, knowledge is something that is core between employees that are representing the nuclear sector. So today our discussion is about human resources strategies in the nuclear sector. We've got renowned experts. Today we have Deputy Director for HR of the Rosatom Corporation, Ms. Tatiana Terentieva. Today we have amazing panel including Mr. Pedro Diego Porras, Technical Lead, Management Capacity Building, Nuclear Power Engineering Section of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Pedro, would you give it? Yeah, right. Thank you. Yes, it's great to see you. We also have Ms. Mira Venkatesh, former Director of the Division of Physical and Chemical Science, International Atomic Energy Agency. It's great to have you. We also have our young colleagues, Ms. Dauda Kazazabrang, Ms. Kamila from Kazakhstan, also Mr. Paul from Ghana. We've got Ms. Charlene Smith, and we have Mark Nelson. So without further ado, I think that we should start our discussion for today, and with let's say keynote speech, I'd like to give the floor to Deputy Director General for HR of Rosatom Corporation, Ms. Tatiana Terentieva. So, Ms. Terentieva, the floor is yours, and the presentation too.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
I will be clicking the presentations. Just give me a slide.
Thank you. Dear colleague, good evening. On behalf of Rosatom, I would like to greet you in our event today, which dedicated one of the important topics in social economy, which are diversity and inclusivity. And I would start from a brief introduction of people side of Rosatom. Today, Rosatom is one of the largest player in the global nuclear market, energy market, and we have a diverse team of 300,000 employees, and 1/3 of our employees are under 35. And we annually recruit about 2,000 institute graduates, and share of our women working in nuclear industry is over 30% too, and it is twice more time than international average indicate. And over 5,000 our employees have doctorate and PhD degrees, and today Rosatom is considered as the best employer. And in addition, we are leading our national HR ranking. Next one. Just a year ago, Rosatom became a member of the United Nations Global Compact, but we already have 100 projects and initiatives which support the global goals for sustainable development. Our people is our priority, and that is why our Vision 2030 is focused on becoming the best in unlocking potential our employees. It is strongly supported by our General Director. Therefore, one of the most important goals for our corporation, not yet, is to provide equal opportunities for every person and guarantee long-term professional career in different areas. This is changing the perception of employee from being just a cog in a big machine to being an important and valuable asset that should be supported its personal and professional growth. And they call it approach as a human centricity. And we built an ecosystem which allows us to nurture talents from a young age. And the next one, I think, yeah. And from young age, and to create flexible and adaptable system of career development. One of the most systemic project is our Rosatom School program. We are supporting schools in building modern STEM programs, in updating equipment school curricula. Furthermore, we train school teachers to apply the best available teaching methods. We assist them in building teachers' networkings. This program covers over 260 schools. In addition, we work in partnership with organizations who share our vision to attract more talents into the STEM. And together with our partners, we reach 1.5 million kids across Russian regions. And it gives us confidence that we will be able to attract the talents youth for bright future nuclear. Next one. One more important priority for us is developing our female employees. We support our corporate women in nuclear community, providing coaching, mentoring, and leadership programs. Engage them into the developing well-being programs and networkings. And last but not least, it is our international academic initiatives for nuclear students. We all know that nuclear is a global industry. That is why it is very important to work in cooperation to solve the skills problem in developing educational networks and sharing the best practices and doing joint programs. For example, we have around 50 international agreements to develop social capital and infrastructure. And right now, about 2,000 international students are studying from 60 countries in the best Russian engineering universities. It's a good examples of supporting their developing nuclear program. And in conclusion, I personally believe the youth is our future. Young people are bright, fast, and cooperative. We're all inspired by the spirit of cooperation that young people are demonstrating at COP26. And it is a good example for all of us. And just thank you for all our young colleagues for making future for the nuclear and for making nuclear a part of global climate agenda. Thank you. If you have a chance, could we switch on the short video?
I would like to ask the technical assistants, yes, to switch on the video. There is a link, if it's possible. Can we have a look?
If we couldn't just now, but maybe at the end, if we have the
So
time.
it's working, right?
Thank you.
If people see this, what would you like them to do?
I would like them to go away and do some research about nuclear power and how it can help us achieve net zero.
We've been working on COP for over a year, which is really exciting.
Where has all the wildlife gone and why the dioxide? Where's the frozen glaciers that ride the rising tides? Isn't there a clean take on which we're all agreed? Late at night we toss and we turn and we dream of what we need. We need net zero. We're holding up for a hero to deliver this right. It's gotta be safe and it's gotta be clean and it's gotta be up to the fight. We need net zero. We all know that it's nuclear to get this right. It's gotta be clean and it's gotta be soon and it's gotta help keep on the lights. Keep on the lights. It's 2 minutes to midnight for what our planet needs. Somewhere just inside our reach, we have the technology. Racing on the timings and with the rising heat, it's gonna take a Superman to get us what we need. We need net zero. We're holding up for a hero to deliver this right. It's gotta be safe and it's gotta be clean and it's gotta be up to the fight. We need net zero. We all know that it's nuclear to get this right. It's gotta be clean and it's gotta be soon and it's gotta help keep on the light. Up where the mountains meet the heavens above, where the sky fills with pollution, we can solve this with nuclear technology. Together with the wind and the sun and the hydrogen, we need nuclear before we run out of time. Out of time, out of time, out of time. We need net zero. We're holding up for a hero to deliver this right. It's gotta be safe and it's gotta be clean and it's gotta be up to the fight. We need net zero. We all know that it's nuclear to get this right. It's gotta be clean and it's gotta be soon and it's gotta help keep on the lights. We need net zero. We're holding up for a hero to deliver this right. It's gotta be safe and it's gotta be clean and it's gotta be up to the fight. We need net zero. We all know that it's nuclear to get this right. It's gotta be clean and it's gotta be soon and it's gotta help keep on the lights. Keep on the lights.
Talent, nuclear people, talents in everywhere, in everything. Thank you.
So we are are the Nuclear Institute Young Generation Network. We're a group of young volunteers who are really passionate about advocating and inspiring for nuclear power as a way to help deliver net zero. You can find out more about us on the website www.netzeroneedsnuclear.com.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a wonderful video prepared by young nuclear generation, and it's incredibly great. And I guess this is something that has to be in the core of human strategies when working with young nuclear energy professionals, and it's all widely supported, especially as I can take in Rosatom. Well, I believe more to come when the first step like this has been taken, and really this is something really like about the heroes. So thank you very much for your speech. And so right now we'll be also covering the topics that are related to mentoring, because mentoring is a very important part of the overall process when we talk about intergenerational knowledge exchange, when we talk about young people sharing their points of view around the career pathway, what are the difficulties that they are facing. And of course, the experts, the ones who've been there, who did their way in the industry, and now also have something to tell what are like the main difficulties from their perspective, and they would like to share the expertise. So I'd like to start this time from the expert panel, and I would like to give a word to Pedro Diego Porres from the International Atomic Energy Agency. It is incredibly great to have you with us today. And we are really looking forward to hearing from you. And also, I would like to ask our technical team to make it full screen to see better. The floor
Thank
is
you
yours.
very much. First of all, I would like to check that the sound is good.
Yeah.
Can you hear me well? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to this event. I think we all would like to be with you in Glasgow and feel the vibe of the negotiations and the technical events that are being held today, like this one. So thank you for inviting me and being with you. With regards to diversity and inclusion and the different human resource strategies that we are working from here, from the agency, and that we know that in the different operating organizations in the nuclear industry are being implementing and launching. Normally, the way we work and the way we explain it is that, as we all know, the nuclear projects are very large, extremely complex. Normally, they encompass different countries, different even continents. So in these projects, we will find a large diversity within the organizations. When we have hundreds of thousands in the whole supply chain of the nuclear industry and the nuclear projects working together with different backgrounds, different professions. And also in this international setup, we will have different cultures with different understanding of the workplace and even at some point different vocabulary with different languages. So diversity is by itself there in the nuclear industry. And because of these social and economic reasons in the projects, we need to work to integrate all the different participants. These policies for inclusion, where the human center is at the human is at the center of the policies and the projects, facilitate a continuous support and integration of the professionals. So all these huge machinery, which are the nuclear projects, where we need to have efficiency and efficacy in the work from a technical point of view, from a safety point of view, personal point of view, we need to get the contribution from each participant. And we only, by following these policies, it's only when we get this sense of belonging from every professional in the organization, if they have developed this sense of belonging to the organization, being committed to the work, deliver good product, good services, good sense of professionalism, is when we can achieve as a project, as an organization, as a group of companies or individuals working towards the objective of the nuclear project, the best. And this sense of belonging, it's also seen in the collaboration between companies, between organizations, and these policies and these personal approaches, always having in mind safety and the technological excellence, is what is behind all these policies and all this work we do. The success of the projects, the success of the organizations rely on the people and the collaboration between the people. The psychological safety, the focus, and the commitment with the organization and with the project. And we are working on different levels, cultural aspects, also gender equity. And for example, I was discussing about the project, but we have to take into consideration all the evolution of from students to professionals, from as Ms. Terentieva was mentioning, from the school, from the university, this commitment to social, to scientific sciences, technology, engineering, focusing on getting the talent from wherever we can get it. That's also diversity. We have to get the involvement of all the young people, the young generation who are willing to work with us and to create a better future for us. And attracting this talent, supporting them to develop their skills, knowledge, technical knowledge, managerial skills, leadership capabilities, and the international experience that they can get is the best we can do to be successful in the projects and in the industry as a whole. So I really would like to congratulate all of you, the organizers, for this approach on this thematic, because in the future we will need as much talent as possible working in the nuclear industry to decarbonize the world. Hopefully in COP26 it will be a successful milestone for the collaboration between the different countries globally, and we get a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Better, thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, now we have almost a full set of the first round. So we've got an opinion from a corporation, from a company. Now we also have this perspective from the international organizations, which is International Atomic Energy Agency. I'd like to come back to the in-person room and give the floor to Mark Nelson, who's Managing Director of the Reading Energy Fund. So, Mark, as long as you are young nuclear professional, so what do you think should be in the core of the human resources strategies in the industry, like from your perspective?
First, I'll say that I'm not actually, depending on which definition you use, I'm not actually a young nuclear professional. I tried really hard. So when I graduated from Cambridge, almost everybody in my program applied to EDF Energy. Almost nobody in the Cambridge University Master's Program funded by EDF Energy even got an interview with EDF Energy. Yeah, weren't good enough, I guess. That's fine. You have to earn your spot in this industry. Eventually, many months after we'd all been rejected, they reached back out to the few people who were still trying to be in the industry, and they invited a few of us to come do interviews. And so I went and did this 2 days of interview. At the end, they offered me a job for a year hence at lower than the cutoff to get a visa to stay in the country. So that's not to pick on EDF Energy. They hadn't decided whether they were or weren't going to build nuclear reactors or whatever. They're going now. It's getting up to speed. It looks like they're going to get another project. But that was my first experience trying to get into the nuclear industry. Then I left the UK and I went to the US and I tried to get a job at the local nuclear plants and failed again. That's because in the US, mainly what the nuclear industry is in the civilian world is like power plants owned by utilities that maybe do keep them, maybe don't keep them, maybe they close them, maybe they don't. You know, you just never know, right? Maybe they open this year, maybe they close next year. So that's how they develop talent. They check and see whether they think they're going to close the plant, and then maybe they don't hire anyone if they think they're going to close it. So we have a lot of plants in the US where that's the way we develop talent. We pay the old people extra to stay around, stop hiring the young people, and tell nobody or everybody to stop taking tours. So not to have any bitterness, just to say that there's a difference from the presentation we saw from you, Tatiana, and what it actually looks like for a lot of the world. I'm not trying to throw my own country or the West under the bus, just that we have a lot to learn about developing talent, and it's actually really difficult for a lot of us to find a spot in the industry. I'm still working on it myself, how to find a spot for the people that come and ask me where to go and how to be a part of the industry. And the first thing I have to do is advise them which utilities aren't trying to destroy their nuclear plants, if we're talking about Americans. So, again, I just had to get some negative out of the way and say there are some really bad problems that the nuclear industry has in some countries because of the complete split between who's building nuclear, who's owning nuclear, who's decommissioning nuclear, who's studying nuclear. Almost totally disorienting. Having said all those negative things, I have to say here's why nuclear is going to keep having the potential to attract the very best. It's because it's the most important energy source in the world and it's the most interesting one. It's one of the only things where you could be starting a nuclear plant development project today. As a mid-career professional, you could be managing a whole team of people building it, and then your grandkids could retire working at that plant without seeing that plant shut down. In the same amount of time, if you're in renewables, 3 different generations would be already filling up a dumpster in that same amount of time of that I just said. And I think for a lot of kids today, they're hearing one thing. They're hearing, don't use plastic straws, don't throw anything away, recycle, make the most of what you have. And then they see semi-disposable energy systems being advertised that don't even remove the need for fossil fuels, mind you. They just accompany the fossil fuels. In my part of the world, I'm from the oil and gas part of the US, and for a long time, oil and gas people, they were like kind of the kings of the engineering schools and everything. They're kind of downtrodden at the moment. There's really hard times in the oil and gas sector in a lot of the world, and a lot of young talent that would have automatically gone into oil and gas in many countries, they're looking for a mission that speaks to them better. These are the people coming to nuclear now. If we speak to them, if we talk to them, if we find a place for them now, we have an extraordinary restocking of talent that can happen, that can make those countries that aren't Russia, like what we just saw, it could make us have just as deep a bench as Russia has with now, 2 decades of really intense investment in human resources. I think that's where we can come back. And I pretty much used up my allotted time, so I'm going to stop there and just say we've been very bad at it. We have the most beautiful mission in the world to show people. We can recruit and retain top talent. We will have to learn a lot from those who are best at it. And I think if there's comments or questions later, I'm sure will come back to me. But
yeah. Thank you, Mark. I think it deserves applause too. And really, the cool thing actually that I found really exciting is that really that the oil and gas industry are facing problems, and talent has to find like a mission, right, in the industry in long term. So while nuclear has this specific potential for the future, so it's fighting for its place, and it's proving itself while being the best and scientifically insensitive. So it is a really great thing to invite more talents into the industry if certain part of those talents have lost belief in the traditional sources like oil and gas, for example. So it is amazing, really. Thank you very much. I think we would go to Ms. Mira Venkatesh, former director of the division at the International Atomic Energy Agency. So Ms. Venkatesh, you've come a really long way in the industry, and actually amazing career path you had. Lots of young people attending here. Really would like to hear from you, from your perspective. So what do you think should be the core in the human resources strategies? What would be most appealing to young generation? And how was your way? What difficulties have you faced? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexander. Thanks, and thanks for that opportunity. And it was nice to hear my previous speakers, Tatiana, mentioning about Rosatom's efforts to engage the youth. So I'm not from the nuclear power industry. So that makes a big difference in the sense nuclear power still is being debated. Is it the way to go, etc.? And you have to keep saying why it is the need of the hour. But when you look at nuclear applications from the side of which I come, I worked at the nuclear power industry, big establishment, Department of Atomic Energy in India, worked there for around 37 years before I went to the IAEA as the director of the Nuclear Applications Division. And my path all through has been in applications and predominantly in medical applications. So there has been no doubt that the medical applications of nuclear technologies, it need not be just radiation. There are several technologies based on nuclear phenomena, which are used in for diagnosis and treatment. And for me, the path when I joined the industry in just after my graduation at 20, I was very enthusiastic because it was something like you are able to do some great change to the health of a person by treating cancer, etc. So I think everybody, whichever industry it is, the enthusiasm and the positive outlook is very important to grow as well as to be happy in what we are doing. So I think on one hand, the young people will have to find the motivation and keep their motivation high by looking at the large picture, whether you are going to be useful to the world, the society, whatever. And at the end of the day, when you go back home, are you feeling satisfied whether you have done something? I like the word which Tatiana said, not just a cog in the wheel, but being one of the important parts of the whole, the industry. So that part, on one hand, it's also from the person who is working, and the other one is the employer. So in this case, if like Rosatom has, Tatiana mentioned about all the efforts, I think that kind of an attitude is very important. And in that respect, I had good bosses who were encouraging, and I had no, fear in approaching them if I had some difficulty, etc. So I think that rapport to build up, it is also both sides. The young will have to be willing to do work with passion. The passion and that positive outlook, I think, were very important. It's not that my journey was all smooth. There were always tensions when we have to, meet the deadlines. This much isotope has to go to this hospital, reactor is not working, etc., etc. So fighting with people, trying to get things done, those were there. And also getting people to work out of the office hours is not always easy. So those aspects, when we have to cross, especially if you have a family with children, it has been at times a bit challenging. But with the family support and with the higher motivation, the goal, it could be overcome. So at the end of 40 years, I feel looking back, there are some things which perhaps I could have done better in the sense networking and reaching out, not being shy, could have perhaps been better, giving me more opportunities. But that is for the youngsters now. I would say that never feel, intimidated. the hard work and the passion has to be there within us. But we have to be also bold enough to, discuss with our bosses or peers, or even reach out. And another point which I think that was very important in my growth was to engage with the end users. As I said, I am from the applications-oriented industry. So whoever is going to be using the product, unless I have good rapport with them, I talk to them, I have to know their difficulties, and I have to find out how I can improve my service to suit the demands. The differences can lead to unnecessary arguments. So the end user engagement, I thought was also important. It was also so when I worked in IAEA, because there it is completely working with the countries and the stakeholders, and at times even two different stakeholders who are not opposed to each other. So there is quite a bit of diplomacy to be used, etc. But that's a different story. But as a professional, just the science and the nuclear, as a nuclear professional, I think motivation, passion, and hard work, of course, in every industry it is important. And networking and reaching out. I think these were all different aspects which helped me to grow to whatever position I could grow to. And I think I see a lot of bright future for the people who have taken nuclear as an option now. Although my previous speaker had doubts about how it is in different parts of the world. Yes, I do agree. It is not always a smooth riding, but in the current situation, I hope that there will be good opportunities for the people who have taken nuclear engineering or nuclear sciences as their profession. Everybody agrees the whole world is running only because of nuclear energy in the sun. Fusion energy is a little far away, but let us start with fission and hope that we will also be able to harness fusion energy soon. I mean, that's one of my dreams. But as I said, I am from applications oriented industry, and right now I see a huge growth in the application. I don't know how many of the people listening here are from application side, but at least in nuclear medicine and application of isotopes for healthcare, there is a huge potential. It has been recognized, and it's a huge growth going on there. So I think I'll stop here. I must have already covered my part of the time, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Venkatesh. I believe we could also give it an applause. And it is incredibly important to hear this perspective and what is really important for the young people in the industry. And actually, you really shown this commitment to nuclear, and it is incredibly important if a nuclear professional throughout the career pathway says this commitment to the industry. And it's incredibly great that you've said that, and this is something that has to be, of course, in a hard, like a loft skill, a loft job. And I'd like to go further on to the nuclear engineer perspective. So I'd like to invite Dr. Charlene Smith from Generation Atomic and Idaho National Laboratory. Charlene, hello. It's great to have you with us today. Charlene participated in our event on the 5th, sharing her story. So right now, the question is around the core of the human resources strategies and the businesses in the nuclear sector. What is really important from your point of view for the human resources strategy, especially for young people? What would you expect from business in the nuclear? The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me, Alexander, and thank you to the organizers for setting up this event. Again, my name is Charlene Smith, and I think one approach to addressing the issue of attractiveness of nuclear energy to young people is to tailor our arguments to different individuals so that we are addressing their day-to-day or month-to-month problems that they face. And in doing so, we need to emphasize how climate change whether directly or indirectly, is the root of those problems. For example, in my case, I grew up in Jamaica, where I progressively experienced an increase in frequency and severity of natural disasters that not only displaced families, but left the entire country without power and water supply for extended periods of time. I remember when I was 9 years old in 2004 and Hurricane Ivan passed through, the entire country was without power for about 3 months. And as a 9-year-old kid, that seems like forever. And so that is my experience that felt like a recurring event for the years after that, natural disasters and different cyclones became more aggressive. So I think these are problems that, again, I personally faced, and that, ultimately led back to climate change playing a factor in the occurrence of these events. And that is one of the main reasons I turned to nuclear energy for solutions, and one of the reasons I became a nuclear engineer as a result. And I think we should start doing the same thing. So tailoring nuclear energy arguments to problems that people face on a day-to-day basis, month-to-month basis, annual basis, and then effectively communicate how nuclear energy could be a solution to those problems.
Thank you, Charlene,
hand
a
it back
lot.
to you, Alexander.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I actually came out to a question for you, if I may do so as a moderator. So what would you really expect from the industry, from an employer, if I can say? So in terms of the nuclear industry, so nuclear is really unique in terms of the certain like collaboration of science, let's say, area for marketing, as long as it's still facing some problems. So, and especially it has a full range of academies, education, science, research institutes, plants, and so on. So many opportunities. So, and what would be something that, from your point of view, might be most appealing for newcomers to the industry? So, could it be medical insurance or something else? What would you really expect from a nuclear employer?
Well, it really comes down to what the person is interested in as a young person. There are many different fields that you can go into in nuclear engineering in general if you want to do water, like desalination, for example, and you be able to do that using nuclear technology or hydrogen production or energy production, or go in agriculture or medicine. I mean, the opportunities are endless, but again, it's going to have to be at which angle that person, that young individual would be willing to take. And that's really something that's going to be up to the person. I think the employers can do a really good job of really advertising the potentials of different types of technology. So not only just saying, okay, well, we have this problem, but more of saying, okay, well, we have a solution, and this is what the world could potentially be like in 5 years and 10 years using this solution, and just make it advertise nuclear energy in such a way that people can see how the end goal is drastically different from the current state of events. And that would push, I think, individuals in the direction of, okay, saying that I want to be a part of that solution. I want the state of this technology to be in motion and working at this stage so that we can mitigate or minimize the effects of climate change.
Thank you, Charlene Law.
I think it's really up to the employers have a responsibility to do advertising, and I think the advertising that they should focus on is to say, this is what could be, and this is what is now, and this is the difference.
Yeah, definitely.
This is where we could be, and this is where we are.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, really share this approach because for many young people coming to the industry or to any other industry, it's incredibly important when the employer itself has the commitment, believes in something that is doing. And of course, it's the spirit of this commitment, the belief in the industry, something that people are doing is, of course, just goes in between, in the heart of the new people in the industry, and it's really important when your employer believes in something that it's doing, and so you do believe. So as we were mentioned before, Mr. Tiantirenti mentioned that Rosatom is working with communities too, and I'd like to invite to the studio young people from the Rosatom Ambassador Program. So the ones who are committed to making nuclear more, let's say, clean from the youth point of view and more attractive. And they are also committed to the nuclear industry. Some of them are students, or the others are young researchers. So I'd like to invite to the studio Mr. Paul Atta-Amoah, research scientist from Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. It is so great to have you with us today, and basically it's just a good reminder that on the 5th we had a young lady coming from Ghana too, telling her story. So it is really great to have you with us today, and the floor is yours right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Thank you, everyone, for having me this evening. It's been great hearing from experts from Rosatom. Mr. Tiana spoke. We heard some message from the IAEA represented by Mr. Pedro as well. My name is Paul Atta-Amoah, as Alexander said. I am a young research scientist from the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. I am also a certified nuclear security professional from WINS, the World Institute for Nuclear Security. I will say that I'm one of the luckiest guys who have also benefited from the part of West Africa, where a lot of countries are seen as newcomer countries, talking about working with, trying to employ the technologies in the nuclear industry. The challenges that the youth face, as said by our colleague from the United States, is very common across board. A lot of people have come across this challenge. Especially the main question is, how do I get employment after going through all the challenges of studying, doing my master's and all that? For me, like I said before, I'm one of the luckiest with the kind of policies that government actually put in place to actually assist young aspiring engineers and scientists and all that. So in my country, some time ago, there was a policy to actually put across the generation of young scientists to actually develop the human resource capabilities. So there was a lot of cooperation with the IAEA and with the United States and with other developed countries and with Russia as well. I am now doing my PhD in Russia, Tomsk to be specific, in Siberia. And as one of the beneficiaries of such great opportunities from Rosatom, having earned a scholarship to study at the National Research Tomsk Polytechnic University, I was also motivated to, as a young scientist, to join the Russian Nuclear Education Ambassadors Group to try and sensitize our colleagues back home and from other parts of the world to actually continue that dream that others have chosen from the past. We've heard of the challenges. It's very common across board. Getting a job these days in the nuclear industry is not easy. But what I encourage my colleagues who are interested in taking up this challenge is the fact that actually, before I even joined the idea of the nuclear industry, having been employed there, I finished my master's in my country, Ghana, about 9 years ago, almost 10 years now. And that idea of having that huge opportunity was not as rich as I have it now. Actually, my experience with a lot of training from experts from the United States and from the IAEA have actually encouraged me a lot. And with my experience in Russia right now, has actually boosted my experience in the rich experiences that is available for the young ones. One of the key solutions I seek to project with the employment issues is that actually a lot of the young don't know how to actually put across the solutions that they can offer the nuclear industry. I believe employers actually are ready to employ almost everybody. Okay, one of the biggest challenges, can they even pay you? Okay, and the other one is that what do you have to offer the industry that you seek to enter? So one of the things that we project is that for young ones to actually study the existing systems, the nuclear industry, they are newcomer countries, and they are already experienced countries who want to offer the technologies to newcomer countries. So how can we project actually new midway technologies that the existing experienced countries can also employ and actually implement locally in the existing countries who also want to actually employ these technologies? Because it all comes across in unique ways, okay? A nuclear power plant that exists in the United States, you can put the same technology in Ghana. A nuclear power plant that exists in Russia, you can put the same technology, or a hospital, radiological facility in Ghana. But when it comes to safety, security, and safeguards issues, we will need locally adapted actually systems, which are also actually internationally accepted at the same time. So these are some of the things that actually will create opportunities for young ones to actually know that though the nuclear industry is huge and it's out there, but you should look at your local systems, okay? The challenges that exist are slightly uniquely different. So how you apply those systems and new technologies and methodologies to actually attract your employers actually to take you on board is very, very important. So if you're able to seek and know some of these little issues that can actually attract employers to know that we have something to offer them, I think it will go a long way to actually help us a lot. Thank you very much, Alexander.
Thank you very much. Actually, it is incredibly important to hear this perspective from Ghana and your vision around STEMs, as long as this is really in the core of educating young nuclear professionals. So still science is a really important part of the overall process, and really educating young people, young nuclear professionals, this is something that has to be there to really move forward in terms of all around the nuclear sector. So it has to be innovative, and only education in this regard, developing the STEM skills would be most appropriate. So I'd like to give the floor to another speaker, also a Rosatom Young Nuclear Ambassador. I'd like to invite Kamila to the studio. She is from Kazakhstan. She's a master student. Kamila, can you hear us well?
Yeah.
Welcome. So actually also I'd like to hear your perspective shortly in regard to the human resources strategy. So you are a student right now, and you are a part of this ambassadors team. So what you are actually looking forward to in the industry, what you're expecting, what are your expectations, what expectations you apply actually to the employees, future employees of yours?
Thank you for inviting, first of all. As the speaker said before, my name is Kamila and I'm from Kazakhstan. Now I'm a master's degree student at TPU. Also, I'm an ambassador of Russian nuclear education and the fellow of IAEA fellowship program named Marie Skłodowska-Curie. To be honest with you, I believe that the representatives from the Soviet Union has radiophobia at the DNA level. And firstly, the industry should change a mindset And we should work not only with school students, but also with children from the kindergarten, just to make a wow effect of our industry and to show what kind of interesting things these children could do in our industry. I absolutely agree with previous lecturers that we have to pay special attention for the students from high school and make some STEM courses. In addition, I can say that we also can make some field trips, and at the university level, the nuclear industry should be as open as possible. I mean that the industry should give students the actual challenges of the industry, and this way, two goals can be achieved at once. The student will have an interesting research paper, and the company can use the results of this research paper and also can immediately pick up talented students for further employment. In this case, the student is helped the work by a teacher, supervisor from the university, and also as well as the representatives at the industry. Also, I believe that in the future, universities will develop some programs which will combine the areas of study. For example, in Tomsk Polytechnic University, it could be School of Nuclear Engineering with School of Information Technology and Robots Engineering to create a program for automatic calculation of intruder penetration time or vulnerability analysis, or the School of Nuclear Engineering with the Medical State University Department of Clinical Psychology in particular, to develop some systems for early detection of a potential insider. So that's all that I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camila. It's really important, really, that nuclear is not only about energy today. So nuclear is about a whole range of spheres, of businesses, of industries. It's also about medical appliances. It's about also, I'd say, other industries. It's incredibly important, really, to provide for education how to apply nuclear energy knowledges in the new fields, new spheres. And with a concluding speech on behalf of the youth part of that session, I'd like to invite Dauda. She's coming from Nigeria. I can see that. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So it has to be Daoud, right? Like in pronunciation.
Dauda.
Dauda, great. Yes, and we're really happy to have you here. He's a master's student from Nigeria, also part of Rosatom young ambassadors. So Dauda, how would you describe your expectations from the industry in your, I'd say, concluding speech? Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, respectable Encore, and just moderator. This has been an amazing event so far, and I've learned a lot. Just adding to what everyone has said prior to me, Paul gave a lot of thought, because we as ambassadors, we have similar thinking. Most of our ideas just revolve around similar concepts. And so, but I would like to add just a few things that I feel could actually enable nuclear technology as a whole to just push forward in terms and compete and actually just dominate the energy sector, and not just the energy sector, the agricultural sector as well, and other spheres. So one of the major problems is that as a master student, we have the problem, I'll call it portability, the ability, you have nuclear softwares that are not compatible with a lot of systems, operating systems. And so, for example, in order for me to work, if we have 20% of students using MacBooks, many of the softwares we use to do calculations involving nuclear physics they're not accessible on operating systems like that. And just the ability for it to be much more accessible to students makes it much more a much more attractive sphere to delve into. Also, as Paul and I think us presenter from Jamaica said, we also have to come down to the level of the people in certain regions to sort of like understand them in order to present a solution for the problems. For example, there was we were talking about many countries where they have light, constant electricity, and compared to other countries where they can't even, the agriculture is poor, the medical system is poor. The last thing on your mind right now is electricity. So we have to find a way to understand that we have a much more, we have a larger population of people who cannot afford certain privileges in comparison to the countries that are stable. And what are we trying to do? We're trying to popularize this sector, and in order to popularize it, we have to make people understand that this is actually accessible. It's not as expensive as people make it look. It's not as risky as people make it appear. It is not as costly as I just said earlier, as people make it look. So we have to present an alternative to coal. My first degree was in petroleum engineering, so I know a lot about this industry. And one of the reasons I decided to study nuclear technologies and science was that I realized that the industry in which I was not, it wasn't going to survive as long as I would have hoped. And so I had to come to terms with the fact that, okay, although you had spent this amount of time, there is just, you have to educate yourself and make an educated decision to either remain relevant and actually bring change to people that actually need it, or just try to be bullheaded and try to be in a sector that actually does not really do good to people in general. I'm not trying to criticize them, but what I'm trying to say is that we have to educate people and create opportunities, popularize agriculture, the nuclear technology in agriculture, and just breeding of animals too. We have genetics too as well. So we have to popularize the sectors, because I feel many of the concept or the ideology, the ideas that people have in countries with less education or with less educational, I would say with less educated people, as soon as they hear nuclear, they think about nukes, they think about nuclear weapons. And so we have to create an alternative that is actually much more, that they can actually relate to more, and which is agriculture, which is healthcare, which is also farming equipment as well. And so, as Camila said, also there was this amazing program that I came across a few days ago, which actually gives children in high school, the chance to go to nuclear plants and just have lectures and just learn more about it. It actually sensitized them to the fact that, to the potential of what the nuclear industry is able to do. And my function, or my basic duty as an ambassador of nuclear education, Russian nuclear education, is that We try as much as possible to make people graduating from schools or people seeking a different alternative or new challenges in their master's or PhD programs. We grant them the opportunity to actually understand that this is not limited to just people who study nuclear physics.
Right now. Would you please close it up a little? Thank you.
Okay, around them. Okay, and so in conclusion, I'll just say that the upside for what we do and what we offer is just immense, and we have to make people understand that it's just more than energy, it's more than power or nuclear weapons. It has to do with more. It's for humanity that we are in the sector that we are in right now, and I think that's the key to global success.
Yeah, Doda, thank you very much. Indeed, it is, and really, there are countries with less, I'd say, opportunities where such companies as Rosatom are working constantly to provide for those opportunities. And to conclude the session, I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Tian Terentieva to say a word, concluding, and I guess we are ready with our discussion for today.
Alexander, dear speakers, thank you very much for your opinions. To my mind, it was absolutely inspired discussion, especially that very important that we all, to my mind, agreement that nuclear have to be more open for the people and show the real how nuclear technology help to solve the real problem of people. We have to be close to the real life of people and show them that it's not only high technology and it's real on one side, but on the other side we have to show more how we help the people life, and it's well qualified students, well qualified employees, and what I see that the passion and love it differ the people who are working in nuclear industry, and to my mind it's one of the main our strength for the future too. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and we are really thankful to you, just a little bit beyond the schedule, but it was an amazing session, and thanks to the speakers for participating, and thanks for the amazing audience today who are with us online and offline. And I believe that this discussion has brought real results to our human centricity and human resources talks, and we are finishing at that. Thank you very much. Have a nice time wherever you are.